Okay, we'll make a start and then hopefully we'll get people joining us as we move through. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third Apprenticeships Network webinar. It's great to see you all. I am representing Libraries Connected today because Sarah Mears is currently on a secondment. So yeah, that familiar face isn't here with us today. We have commissioned Penny and Kevin to set up the network, and Penny will take us through the session as we go. The focus of today's webinar is to explore how apprenticeships can be used to help attract, retain and develop staff. And we're joined by some fabulous speakers to give us some of their insight. Just some quick housekeeping first. Please could I ask that everyone stays muted while the speakers are presenting, just avoids a bit of background noise. If there are any questions, please feel free to write them in the chat and we will get to them at the end of the session once we've sort of heard from our speakers. This session is also being recorded, so if you prefer to have your camera off, that's absolutely fine. But as a speaker, it is quite nice if you can sort of see people as well, so feel free to keep it on if you'd like to. The recording will be available after the session to rewatch. It'll be posted onto the Basecamp network, so that can be rewatched or shared with colleagues that couldn't make it. I will now pass over to Penny to introduce our speakers for today.
Thanks, Emma. Yes, so welcome from me and Kevin this afternoon as well. Today we've got speakers from Cambridgeshire and from CILIP, and each of them will speak for 15 minutes. During the time they're speaking, if you have questions, would you put them in the chat? And then we'll come to them after they've both finished speaking at 2:35. We're going to use the questions as the basis for an extension to the frequently asked questions document, which is on Basecamp that Emma just mentioned, which is pretty comprehensive now. So the first of our speakers is Julie Kisby. She's District Library Manager in Cambridgeshire, and she's going to talk about how they've used a range of apprenticeships and training schemes to develop both new and existing staff. And her colleague Christopher Waters will join her briefly to talk about his experience with the team leader apprenticeship. I believe, Christopher, you did your team leader apprenticeship in the library service, then left to go to another department and are now back in the library service. So that's an interesting model as well. So over to you, Julie.
Thanks very much, Penny. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. I haven't got a presentation for you. I'm just hoping to chat through our experiences. So hopefully it's interesting for everyone. So as Penny mentioned, in Cambridgeshire, over the last few years, we've tried a few different approaches really to both to apprenticeships and training schemes. Looking at apprenticeships was something we'd wanted to do for a long time, wanted to dip our toe in the water. We actually began with the Level 3 Library Information and Archive apprenticeship back at the end of 2020. So we have recruited externally on a fixed term contract for an apprentice. We've also recruited externally to permanent positions with an option there to study for an apprenticeship alongside their role. And also it's kind of evolved and we are offering existing staff the opportunity to complete an apprenticeship as well. So I'd like to just take a couple of minutes to talk about our experience with our first library apprenticeship, because I think this is a good example of developing somebody within the role. So as I say, we took the plunge at the end of 2020 via an external recruitment, and we were incredibly lucky. We had a really positive experience. Everything worked well. We had a really enthusiastic and engaged apprenticeship. She actually took on an endpoint assessment project around encouraging young adults into the library space. As part of this project, she also revamped the library space on a very tight budget, as you can probably imagine, and incorporated the book talk collection, which is something that's actually grown across our libraries as time's gone on. And she also developed the library's Instagram presence. So The problem we soon realised, or the danger with having a really fabulous apprenticeship on a fixed term contract, was the possibility that there wouldn't be any suitable opportunities at the end of her contract. And we got quite concerned as this drew near. We really wanted to keep Mari in post, and at one point it didn't look as though we would have any available opportunities. However, fate was on our side, and close to the very end of Mari's contract, a suitable full-time library assistant position actually came up, and she was successful in gaining that. Since then, Mari's gone on to achieve a part-time digital library assistant role, which is actually a promotion, and she works that alongside a part-time community library assistant frontline role. And I really feel that the apprenticeship opportunity gave Mari such a broad insight into all areas of the library service. There were chances to visit a number of different sites and the opportunity to meet many colleagues in a variety of roles. And that really built up a strong network and a much bigger picture of the service as a whole, which then stood her in good stead to apply for that digital role when it came up. That also gave Mari the chance to work on a project that still is a passion for her. So developing the teen space in the library, looking at the stock, really talking to that demographic and setting up reading groups and activities for that age group. The passion's continued and grown. She has now set up a pilot project, which she calls Adulting 101. These are sessions for older teens, looking at areas such as applying for jobs, dealing with finance and moving out, which she found was a really something they really wanted to see happening in their libraries. And that project draws in a range of both internal and external partnerships. And I genuinely feel that the apprenticeship gave Mari the contacts and the confidence she needed to develop that programme. And I'm not sure it would exist if Mari hadn't completed the apprenticeship. So another success from Mari's first apprenticeship with us was the teamwork and team spirit that it created. She managed to create a buzz around her endpoint assessment project within the team. And this inspired lots of interest amongst her library colleagues. Members of the team had a bit of an insight into what the new challenges and experiences Mari was having and wanted to try that opportunity for themselves. So at this time, our learning provider, Let Me Play, hosted a webinar for us, which was available for all our library staff and gave them a chance to ask questions about the scheme, hear from tutors, and also hear from Mari about her experience with the apprenticeship. And as a result of that webinar, we had another full-time member of staff start an apprenticeship in the same library and 2 more part-time level 3 apprenticeships across the county. I feel we've still got a way as a service to go towards developing a strategy around the way we embed the use of apprenticeships in the service. And I'm keen to investigate things like the level 2 customer service apprenticeships, which Kath discussed in the last webinar, and to have a plan around how we add the opportunity to study an apprenticeship into future recruitment, perhaps as an option rather than a requirement. So one of the potential disadvantages we came across was because we didn't have a cohort of apprentices going through the level 3 at the same time, was the lack of that team bonding, which I know people have talked about before, but we have now formed our own internal network and they're meeting regularly, discussing hints and tips. And actually the fact that they're all at different stages of their apprenticeship journey has actually worked out quite positively, because they're able to advise and support each other in a bit of a different way and provide a bit of encouragement. So during the time our first library apprenticeship was underway, an opportunity for a team leader, a level 3 again, apprenticeship was presented to us by our learning provider, Let Me Play. And at this time, we'd recently appointed a brand new full-time district library assistant, which for us is a supervisory post. And we presented this additional opportunity to our new member of staff. So my colleague Christopher joins us now, and he's just going to spend a little bit of time talking about his experience with that apprenticeship and the subsequent opportunities it presented. So over to you, Christopher, for a minute.
Thank you, Julie. I hope everyone can hear me all right. Brilliant, thank you. So, yes, as Julie said, I'm Christopher Waters. I recently started a new role as a district library manager with Cambridgeshire Libraries. But my career with Cambridgeshire started in April 2021 when I joined as a district library assistant. So that was the supervisory role that Julie just mentioned, and it was in fact in one of Julie's libraries in her team. And around the time of applying for that vacancy, I'd also applied for an area library manager position, but I hadn't been successful in getting this role because I'd struggled to sort of demonstrate some of the real world experience that was required. So I graduated with a philosophy degree in 2016 and worked in various entry level jobs. And a consistent theme had been that I was quite frustrated by the lack of development opportunities that were available to me, and the fact that progression pathways that were promised sort of didn't materialize. And at this point, I'd worked both for a well-known national department store retailer and a small London-based museum. So neither of these organizations really offered me what I was looking for. So in June 2021, my line manager approached me with this opportunity that Julie mentioned to complete the level 3 team leader apprenticeship. And I really seized this opportunity. I can still remember having that initial meeting with her and feeling like my potential had been recognised, feeling valued as an employee, really knowing that the council were committed to investing both time and money in my development. And this gave me a real boost to my confidence and really reassured me that I was on the right path. So the apprenticeship itself was my first formal learning experience since university. So it was a bit of a shock to the system. But as a new employee, it was a really excellent catalyst for networking within the service, and the various different places my learning took me motivated me to explore different areas of the service, and led to lots of different opportunities, which I really don't think I would have had otherwise. And the most valuable of these was really getting to spend time shadowing colleagues and gaining exposure to the many different teams working across the service. So I completed my qualification in September 2022, and I was actively considering my next steps. I was keen to put my learning into action. And at this time, a team leader job was advertised in the council's registration service. And I applied for this. I was successful in securing the role. And I'm really certain that my team leader qualification set me apart from the other candidates and was a huge asset. It certainly gave me a wealth of experience to draw on in the recruitment process. And I was really able to evidence some of those real world skills that I was perhaps lacking in the past. So having been successful in securing that role, I spent 9 months leading a team of 25 ceremony officers in our registration service. And I did envisage that I would stay with this role longer, but a vacancy came along in the summer of this year for a district library manager. And you can probably see where this is going. So I now manage Cambridge Central Library and our 5 city branch libraries. And I'm really excited about the potential apprenticeships have as a development pathway for my team. And Julie mentioned retention as she spoke, and that's a key priority for me because we experience quite high staff turnover in the city. The recruitment market is highly competitive, so anything that we're able to offer to set ourselves apart is highly valued. So I'm now passionate about embedding apprenticeship opportunities into our recruitment process and making these available to my whole team as a development opportunity. So we currently have a part-time community library assistant enrolled onto the library's information and archives level 3 apprenticeship, and I hope to get another member of staff enrolled in the new year. But I think we could make this a much bigger part of our offer. So my final thoughts really, my line manager recently joked that Cambridgeshire Libraries is my Hotel California. You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. And the opportunity I had to complete the team leader apprenticeship has really played a significant role in my decision to return to libraries and also to stay with the county council. So I've only been here for a relatively short period of time, about 2.5 years, but I'm really committed to continuing my career and developing here into the future. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Christopher. No, that's lovely to hear you speak. And yeah, we can't tell you how sad we were when we thought we'd lost him, but we swore we'd get him back, and we did. So just to pick up from where Christopher left off, we then had experience of the two different types of apprenticeship qualifications. So that led me to research a bit more, along with the support of the County Council's apprenticeship advisor, into what other apprenticeship standards might be available and what might be possible for the staff in our service. So we began an exercise to map out all of the roles within the service to an appropriate apprenticeship standard. Didn't 100% get there, but most of them we managed to map across. And as a result of that exercise and promotion of the opportunities, we now currently have one of our area library managers studying for the Level 5 operational or departmental management manager standard. And our library support team manager is studying for her Level 6 project management integrated degree qualification, quite a mouthful. Both of those apprenticeships will really benefit the service, as well as developing and supporting the individuals in their existing roles. They'll provide us with much needed project management support, and that will be invaluable in the future with the library development projects we have coming up in Cambridgeshire over the next few years. So just going on from the apprenticeships, alongside starting that journey back in 2020, we also ran a successful Kickstart programme for just 5 young people, but each went on to achieve either a temporary or permanent role in the service or onto other employment. And the way the Kickstart programme was structured meant that the shortlisting and interview process was a lot less formal. So it gave us as managers the chance to meet and chat to candidates about their skills. And I believe it really served its purpose in giving young people a chance where they might not have stood out against a strong field of more experienced candidates, particularly with regard to interview and application skills. One of the things I'd love to see actually is some kind of paid library internship offer developed, where we could give some opportunities to young people who don't have much experience. I'm not sure the apprenticeship really addresses that due to the breadth of competition there sometimes can be for the roles, and also the commitment we need from them for the studying and off-job learning. So we're also taking part in another bit of a mouthful, the National Graduate Development Programme scheme as a service. We currently have our second placement, and taking part in that scheme has also added resource and a different skill set for us to our library management team, and hopefully given the placement holder a really good insight into the library service, which they'll then take on to their next placement in the council. The graduates work on a number of outcomes across the service, which feed into the KSBs they need to demonstrate for their graduate scheme. The first time we worked with a graduate actually coincided with the Kickstart scheme cohort at the time, and I found that giving the graduate the outcome of being a mentor for that group was really valuable experience for everyone, because the Kickstarters felt they had someone different to turn to for advice. And it also gave our graduate placement a bit of a first experience into line management and development of staff, which is one of the outcomes they can find difficult to fulfill through the scheme due to the length of their placements. So each of the schemes we've taken part in have presented an opportunity to us to expose people to the service where they may not have initially chosen this as a career. And we found that because, as we all know, libraries are actually quite interesting, exciting, varied places to work. Often that's then developed a loyalty and passion for a career in the service. So we've consciously kept our approach to the different schemes really quite flexible so far, using each of the programmes and standards to tailor to an individual's development needs and aspirations. And it's been wonderful to have so many additional development opportunities available for our staff, and even that task of plotting the off-job learning opportunities for those on the apprenticeships has actually thrown up different creative ideas for our managers to use for development opportunities for the whole team. And by talking to each of the current and past apprentices, the overwhelming response I've received from everyone is that the apprenticeship opportunity gives the feeling that you're being valued and invested in as a person, and also gives a great exposure to people, places and services that you may not have had the opportunity to encounter as part of your role initially. Thank you. End of mine.
Thank you very much, Julie. Thanks, Christopher. I think we'll move straight on to Claire's talk. Please remember to put any questions in the chat. I know it's very rich, so it's quite difficult to think of questions if you're a reflective kind of person at the same time as listening, but I hope you can perhaps do that as we go along. So Claire, over to you. Claire is Professional Services Development Manager at CILIP. She's going to give an overview of Level 7 apprenticeships, including an outline of the Level 7 Archivist and Records Manager and an update on the Level 7 Library Knowledge and Information Professional Apprenticeship. So over to you, Claire.
Thank you, Penny, and thank you for inviting me to talk today. As Penny said, I'm Professional Services Development Manager at CILIP. That means that I've got responsibility for professional registration, accreditation and apprenticeships. I'm here today with my hat on for CILIP Pathways as the endpoint assessment organisation to provide you with an overview of the Level 7 Archivist and Records Manager apprenticeship and an update on the development of the Level 7 Library Information and Knowledge Management Professional. To add some context around the apprenticeships, I'm going to briefly outline some of the stakeholders involved and differentiate their responsibilities that you may not be aware of. Touch on the endpoint assessment process, highlighting the differences between the Level 3 and the Level 7 as well. Again, just to give you a bit of context that you might not be aware of. I have a short presentation, so I'm just going to share my screen here with a few slides that are more of a guide than anything else. So, the Level 7 Archivist and Records Manager apprenticeship went live literally a month or so ago at the beginning of October. It was designed like all of the standards and developed through a Trailblazer group. The Trailblazer group, in case you're not aware, is formed of employers from the sector and goes through a very, very structured approach to developing a standard that starts with the identification of the role and why this makes this apprenticeship would be unique compared to other apprenticeships that are already available. And then it moves on to map out the role through a set of duties. These duties are then broken down further into a set of knowledge, skills and behaviours that are needed to perform the duties effectively. For the Level 7 Archivist and Records Manager, there are 22 knowledge, 25 skill and 8 behaviour KSBs. The Level 7 is classed at the same level as a master's qualification. Once the standard was developed, it must go through a process of being approved by Ofqual and ESFA, and that happened earlier this year. If you'd like to have a look at the standard in detail, what's involved, then the link on this slide here will take you through to the Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education website, which holds all of the details. And I'll make a copy of this link to send through afterwards. The Level 7 Library Information and Knowledge Professional is currently in the latter stages of development. It's gone through exactly the same process as the others. You may have seen recently that the standard was released for public consultation, and the results of that consultation are currently being collated together by IFATE to feed into the development process. The next steps that we need to go through now are working with training providers to help identify the correct funding band, so to identify the funding that's available through the apprenticeship levy, and also to develop the endpoint assessment plan. Now, there's still a lot to do, but if all goes according to plan, we expect that this apprenticeship will be ready to go live next summer. Fingers crossed. I wanted to also touch on some of the stakeholders that are involved that you may not be aware of in full. And I wanted to highlight in particular the differences between CILIP as a professional body and CILIP Pathways as the endpoint assessment organisation, because they're two very separate organisations, but because they've got similar names, there can be sometimes some confusion. So CILIP as a professional body is there for supporting professionals in the sector. The responsibility that we take on is to support and encourage all recognised routes into the profession, to provide optional additional opportunities for learning, developing and networking whilst a person is going through the apprenticeship. They provide development, peer networks, opportunities for recognition of a person's professional career once they've completed the apprenticeship as well. So it's continuing professional development going forwards. One thing to note is that professional bodies like CILIP do not have any regulatory responsibilities or rights in apprenticeship delivery at all. CILIP Pathways is the endpoint assessment organisation, and we are signed up to deliver endpoint assessments for both the level 3 and the level 7 Archivist and Records Manager apprenticeship. We hope that once the development has taken place and the approvals have gone through, that we will also be assigned the Library Knowledge and Information Management Professional apprenticeship for endpoint assessment as well. Now, CILIP Pathways and Endpoint Assessment Organisation is a wholly owned subsidiary of CILIP, but it is completely independent of CILIP. It operates independently and it has its own independent board. This ensures that Pathways can provide impartial assessment services to apprentices on standard. As an endpoint assessment organisation, our responsibilities in delivering the endpoint assessment include conducting the assessment process as set out in the endpoint assessment plan, ensuring independent, high quality, fair and consistent assessment, and providing advice on preparing for final assessment only. And we do that through the publication of guidelines. And there are a number of guidance documents available that Pathways has produced. One is specific for apprentices going through the endpoint assessment process themselves, and then there is a separate guidance for employers and training providers that are putting apprentices through the endpoint assessment process, so that they know what to expect and how to support the apprentice in doing that. There are obviously other stakeholders involved in the process, not discounting, of course, the apprentices themselves, you as employers, and the training providers. There's also the regulators. There's a number of different regulators involved in apprenticeships. IFATE, the Institute for Apprentices and Technical Education, ESFA, which is the Education, Skills and Funding Agency, and Ofqual, who quality assure the endpoint assessment process. And finally, I just wanted to briefly highlight what the endpoint assessment process consists of. But bear with me on this one because it can get a bit confusing with the numbers. So the slide might help in highlighting what I'm talking through here. So an apprentice will pass from their training through to the endpoint assessment only when an employer is happy that the apprentice is working at a consistent level and is able to demonstrate all of the knowledge, skills and behaviours required for the apprenticeship. Once this is established, the apprentice will pass through Gateway. On passing through Gateway, they submit a portfolio consisting of 10 to 15 pieces of evidence to demonstrate the knowledge, skills and behaviours that are associated with the appropriate assessment method. For the level 3 apprenticeship, this is knowledge, skills and behaviours associated with assessment method 2. And for the level 7 apprenticeship, it is knowledge, skills and behaviours associated with assessment method 1. At the point of Gateway, also, we need proof of qualifications in English and maths to meet the minimum standard. And the minimum standard for both levels is functional skills level 2 for English and maths, or GCSE grade and above, or equivalent. The next main piece of work to be submitted is the project. The project can cover a wide range of topics, and I think in previous webinars we've touched on some of the topics that the level 3 has covered before. For the level 3, the project delivery should take approximately 4 weeks to complete. It must cover all the knowledge, skills and behaviours that are associated with assessment method 1. The written report that is associated with the project should be 4,500 words, give or take 10%. Also accompanying that project is a presentation. Now the presentation should last no more than 15 minutes and is followed up by a question and answer session with the assessor afterwards. The level 7 project is a bit more in depth and longer. It can take up to 150 hours over 14 weeks to deliver. The project must cover all the KSBs associated with assessment method 2. The written report that accompanies this must be 5,000 words, give or take 10%. And the Q&A that is associated with the projects lasts up to 40 minutes with the assessor. Before projects are submitted on either level, apprentices are required to complete a project proposal for approval, referencing how they will meet each of the KSBs. Finally, a note on the professional discussion. The professional discussion for each level is delivered like a semi-structured interview. So it's structured through questions from the assessor, but is meant to be more discursive in style from the apprentice's side. For the level 3, the professional discussion is 60 minutes long and consists of a minimum of 10 questions. The professional discussion for the level 7 is 150 minutes long and consists of a minimum of 14 questions. So there's a little bit of difference there between the two. And I'd like to finish there and ask if there's any questions.
Thank you very much, Claire. I'd like to ask a question, if that's all right. I can see there's one or two in the chat, so I will hand over to Kevin as promised. But I just wondered, because Julie, you were talking about a strategy, you know, that's what you'd like to have more of a strategy for apprenticeships in Cambridgeshire. I think that's what you said. And I can hear that you're starting to think about that. I'm wondering, Claire, you are talking about the level 7 today, and how library colleagues that you're working with are thinking about using level 7 apprenticeships for, I mean, I guess the strategy will include recruitment and retention and development, those sort of elements. So I guess both of you, I don't know who would want to start with that. Claire, can you? Or maybe it's a silly question. Don't worry if it does.
Not at all. So from experience, from what I've heard, people talk about in terms of how they're expecting to use this. There is a recruitment drive about bringing people in at a senior level, and
Right.
there are certain industry sectors that are struggling with the level of the level 3, that are waiting to use the level 7 as a strategy to bring in new talent and help inform their EDI recruitment aims, objectives as well.
Okay, so looking to recruit at that master's level to libraries. Okay, yeah, especially. Okay, and Julie, do you have any comments on that? You know, on your idea, your thoughts about strategy and recruitment and development and retention and so on?
I think for us it would definitely, well, as well as helping with recruitment, it's definitely about that retention aspect. And I think it really boils down to, I think Christopher summed it up really nicely. It's about feeling valued, isn't it? And people wanting to invest in your future. And definitely we have a few colleagues waiting for that level 7 to come out, so they can have a look at what's available. Yeah.
I think Claire said that might be next year.
Yes, summer. I've written it down.
Next
yeah,
summer.
2020.
Fingers crossed. Thank you very much, both of you. Kevin, what?
You've got one question in the chat, which I presume is for Julie. Which I think Julie did cover a little bit in, but maybe you could expand on it. Do you offer current staff an opportunity to do an apprenticeship while working in a substantive role, or is it always for new staff on a temporary contract?
No, absolutely. When we started with a new member of staff. That was our first sort of testing the water, but we had such a level of interest from within the team to say, "Oh, that looks really interesting, what she's doing, how can I get involved with that?" So our learning provider helped us to put together a webinar for our existing staff that was recorded with lots of questions and answers. And yes, we've now got 3 or 4 existing members of staff going through it, and I know Christopher's got other members in his team wanting to take part in the apprenticeship. So we recently ran a procurement exercise with our we're lucky to have an apprenticeship advisor within the county council, so she helped us procure we have a number of spaces available if people want to take up the level of 3 apprenticeship, and it's on a kind of a rolling program, so we've got a certain period of time, so that's really useful because not everybody was ready at that time. We also started with the idea that it had to be full-time staff, but we've been really flexible around that as well. And I think, again, in Christopher's team, I think there's somebody on around 16 hours doing an apprenticeship, which is very difficult. I think it's difficult to fit in that time, and it's about how you work the off-job training time into that role. But I think anything is doable, really. That would be my advice, to just be really open and flexible about the different opportunities.
Can I just add, if you've got staff on a part-time role, the length of the apprenticeship can be extended. So if they're on half hours, half full-time hours, then the apprenticeship time can be doubled, both for training and for the EPA bit at the end as well. Can I also add that in terms of continuing professional development and that staff retention piece, that CILIP has designed a conversion route into professional registration as well, following on from the apprenticeships. So for the level 3 apprenticeship, an apprentice, once they've completed, can have 12 to 18 months after completing that to put together some work to gain certification level professional registration, which is the level before chartership. And they can actually skip certain criteria and use their apprenticeship as the work already done to demonstrate against that criteria. And we're creating similar paths for the level 7s into chartership as well.
Great. Kevin, do we have other questions at the moment? Or?
We don't, but I've got a question for Claire about the level 7 archivist. Practically, if somebody wanted to set that up, what's the first steps they would need to do? How many training providers are there, for example?
At the moment, there's only one designated training provider. That's Westminster Adult Education Service. Westminster are running both an in-person and a remote learning program, and they've got three cohorts on program that are split up by region, so the cohorts can network within their own region, and that is going quite well, from what I've heard to date on that. So if anybody does want to get in contact, I'd be happy to pass them on to Westminster.
Great, thanks.
Okay, so no more thoughts on, I think Julie requested some kind of scheme for attracting younger people into libraries. Has anyone else in the audience, when I say the audience, in the audience, and have any of you got thoughts on that or ideas on that? Is it a big issue, the recruitment of younger entry-level people, I guess we're saying, into libraries?
I think for me, it just doesn't feel any even playing field for them always, because they are competing with people, even down to the, and maybe that's something around our recruitment process, but even down to completing the application form, it's very difficult to get shortlisted sometimes. And that's where the Kickstart was great, because it just opened the door for those people, you know, just to talk about their skills and interests and that. And some of the people we had were absolutely fabulous, you know, and they've gone on to great things. So it's a fantastic opportunity for them.
Claire, are all the apprenticeships, level 3 is the entry, is the first level, I suppose, at the moment, is that right?
It is, yes, yeah. It is at the standard that's counted as A level. So school leavers should be able to come onto the programme.
Yeah. Okay. Would anyone else just like to put a hand up, start a discussion, or shall we end there for today? That's what I'm wondering. No? Please feel free, just... No, I think no. Okay, well, it just remains then, I think, to thank Julie and Christopher and Claire very much for very informative talks, and for Kevin just to wrap up, I think, with you know, what's happening next with the apprenticeship, the network rather.
Yeah, so for those of you that don't know, Penny and I have been working for Libraries Connected to help set up an apprenticeships network, which operates on Libraries Connected Basecamp platform. So if anyone who is here is not a member and would like to be a member, then I'll put my email address in the chat, kevin@kevinjbolton.com, and we can join you. And the aim of the network is really to have a place for to exchange information, share tips, ideas, etc. We've also created a frequently asked questions document, which has tried to pull together all the different questions that we've had during the free webinars that we've delivered, and other questions that emerged when we were forming the network. And that document is available on Basecamp. And what we'll be doing after this webinar is we'll update that document slightly to incorporate some of the questions and themes that have emerged from this webinar. And the idea is that it should be a document that should be updated as we go along. So if you haven't seen that, have a look at the version that's on Basecamp at the moment, and we'll update that and put it out a new version early next year. And if for those of you that are members, just to encourage you, if you do have questions or thoughts, please don't feel shy. Please put it on the network on Basecamp. To date, we've kind of where there has been discussion, it's been quite lively and good, but it kind of feels like there's periods where it goes a little bit quiet, or if people have thoughts on what the network could be focusing on, then again let me or Penny know as well. So that's it. So I think we can formally close the webinar now. And again, thanks to our speakers this afternoon.